You have said that America has been hijacked by the banks, that America is bank-owned.
It's a bank-owned state, is what I said. It's not a state-owned bank, it's a bank-owned state.
Yes.
There's been the biggest heist in history. I mean, and the money is unbelievable. And why have they gone there? Well, because, you know, there was an old bank robber used to say, why do you rob the bank? And he said, well, because that's where the money is. Where is the money? The money is in the state. Here in Iceland, the money is in the government. You know, it's people, the government's using money that comes in form of taxes and pension funds, and it's sitting there, and the banks are going after it. It is a heist, you know. And the fact is that we need to salvage the banks because we do need to keep the financial system going. We need to protect people's depositors. Yeah. But in the 1930s, Roosevelt, the first thing he did was to restructure the banks. He said, right, we must protect deposits, but we're going to separate out that gambling end of the bank, you know, the so-called financial intermediaries that do speculation and that invest and so on. We keep that separate. That was the Glass-Steagall Act. And he did that within 3 days, if you like, of the anger that erupted over the banks. But currently the Obama administration is not restructuring. And instead the banks are just standing at the door saying, we want more, we want more.
They're pumping money into the banks, so you think we need a new system?
Absolutely. We need to restructure the banks. We need to make them smaller. We need to downsize everything. We need to downsize the financial system. It's as if you had a restaurant feeding, you know, an Icelandic restaurant feeding the whole of Britain and Holland in food. It's not sustainable. You can't do it. You need to have more local banks, more banks that understand in this part of the world what is happening to business there, whether or not these people are trustworthy, whether or not they really are making those rates of returns. If I sit here in Iceland and I'm lending money to someone in Britain and I have no idea whether or not that really is a business with a rate of return, I make errors. It's natural. So we need to downsize the banks, restructure them.
Of course, there's a...
I don't believe necessarily that we should nationalize them, by the way.
No.
Because, you know, I don't think governments can run banks. But governments have to regulate them, and they have to control the way in which banks create credit.
So we need earlier you mentioned the Bretton Woods system.
Yeah.
Do we need a second Bretton Woods?
Definitely we need a Bretton Woods system. We need a new global system where we manage the imbalances in the world. Because the other thing, which, you know, the G20 met in London a few weeks ago, big furore, you know, lots of pictures and posing and lots of spinning of wonderful tales and things. But they didn't address the fact that the United States has got a massive deficit, and so has Britain, and China has a massive surplus. Yes. And this is leading to global imbalances. And we haven't managed those, but we have to manage those balances. Between 1945 and 1971, we lived through what the economists called a golden age. Yes. And that was because we managed balances. We managed trade, and we managed capital flows, and we managed interest rates. And we said, if you manage all of those things, business thrives. And sure enough, it did. And then came along 71 Nixon and co, and they said, no, let the banks run the economy. Let the finance sector run the global economy. Yeah. Let us privatize the financial sector and let them run it. And look what we have. You know, we have high interest rates, we have financial crises, and now we have destruction of value.
And globalization has been a mess.
Terrible mess. It's, you know, it's ended up. Lots of people have got very rich. Yes. Let's not beat about the bush here. Yeah. Lots of people have got extraordinarily rich on the back of it, and a lot of people have been lifted up by trade and so on, and people have been able to borrow, and that's enabled them to do up their houses and everything. But we now are going to go through a period of terrible destruction, and I don't know whether or not, personally, I don't think that the benefits will outweigh the costs.
But money and credit, it's a mysterious phenomenon. It's the way the banks have been run, really sort of printing money, and this touches on of course, on the subject of debt relief.
Yeah, I mean,
what is a real economy? What is
exactly. So I think, you know, one of my missions is to help people understand what money is and what credit is, you know, because what the banks do is a kind of magic. And when people say to me, no, they take my savings and they use my savings to lend to somebody else, it's rubbish. They enter a number into a ledger, and, you know, the effort of that is nil. And the cost of it is nil. And then they charge you a rate of interest on it. Of course, they like to have collateral against that loan. Yeah. that they have. So your property or whatever is the collateral. But that's all it is. They have no savings in the bank. They have no money in the vaults. You know. So it's an effortless and a costless activity from which they make enormous sums of money. But that is why we have to regulate them. If we're going to give them the power to create money, it must be regulated. But I think once we understand that, because, you know, they don't print money. No. The central bank prints money. Yeah. But if you think about your own, the way you handle money, how much printed money and minted coins do you carry of your total money? You only carry about 2%. To go with a coin machine or to play. Yeah. But most of your money is a bank transfer, internet transfer. You know, you never see it. You never touch it. It doesn't exist. It's an abstract concept. Yes. And for that, the banks get paid a lot of money. Yes. So I think, you know, we need to come back to... They're not printing money. Printed money is now a tiny proportion of the money in the global economy. Yeah. They are just entering a number into a ledger. And in the case of the central banks, they've entered something like $7 trillion into a ledger, and they've given it to the banks across the world since the crisis began in August 2007. $7 trillion? What could we do with $7 trillion? And we've been told no. If you ask them, did you raise this from the taxpayers? They say, no. It just fell out from the blue sky. Now, if I want $7 trillion to help Africa or Latin America or to clean up the oceans or to do something about the atmosphere, the banks will say, no, that's terribly hard. You know? Yeah. And I think we, the citizens, have to come to an understanding of what's going on here. And when we understand it, we have to demand more of our banks.
But a key factor in the system is that everybody actually borrows money and has credit. And now... for example, in Iceland and in other countries, people are talking about the necessity of debt relief, that people have just borrowed so much money that they will not be able to pay it back. And, of course, governments as well. Yes. Yeah. What is your point on that?
Well, the point is this, that, you know, there are constraints. The banks can enter a number into the ledger. Without any effort, they can create credit. But there's a limit. And the limit is the amount of it that can be repaid. And the limit is how much labour you and I can perform to repay that debt. Yeah. You know? And there's a limit to that. How many cod do we have to fish out of the sea to repay the debt? There's a limit to that. And the banks did not understand that limit until they'd gone well over it. And when you are well over it, you can't go on plundering the sea of cod. No. You have to write off some debt. You have to say, sorry, the bank's made a huge mess here. It just has to be written off. That's why we have bankruptcy law. Bankruptcy law is the most civilized thing. It's the most wonderful invention of an advanced civilization. It says that when banks behave stupidly and overlend, the debt is not repayable. You can bankrupt a company, you can bankrupt a country, you can destroy it to get your money back. But funnily enough, when you destroy the company, it doesn't pay back. Yeah. Or you can write off the debt and return that company to the real economy to get them active again, and then you get some money back into the economy. So that's the choice. And the wonderful thing about bankruptcy law is that it recognizes that debt has become unpayable, and you must then at some point write it off and start again.
Instead of becoming a slave
or dying as a slave, exactly. Because what can a slave do? What can a starved, weak, you know, impoverished slave do that a healthy, vigorous, you know, well-fed man, you know, can do? It's the difference. And so you can choose to destroy that economic capacity, or you can write off the debt and then revive the economic capacity. That's the choice.